every day we would see in the sales organization how many calls we pulled, who we serviced, and what our response time was. If indeed you did business with us, if indeed we fail you on 4 hours, you're not going to have to tell us. We're going to tell you. It might have happened in the worst year 4 times a year. But I asked the client in the very beginning, if indeed it does happen, what do you want to have happen? You want to cancel the contract? Tell me what you want and we'll do it. There's a word that's inside Wired that we utilize as our standards, and that's integrity. If it's not what we promised, we'll make it right. And we have.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Got the Mawby family, the trio here, the most that have ever been on a NWA Founders podcast. Thanks for letting us come to your office here in Pinnacle. Our purpose is to encourage entrepreneurs here in Northwest Arkansas. I think people have got a lot to learn from your story. So we've got Matt, Matthew, and Mitchell. Why don't you give us kind of the 30-second overview before we dive in? What is PBS? And what do y'all do? What do you do here in Northwest Arkansas?
Well, what we do today in comparison to what we did in the past is a lot different. When I got in the business in 1986, we were a copier company. And I mean, everything revolved around copiers in somebody's office. And the evolution of what has happened is it's always been that we've always had a tangible device that made the relationship possible. And early on, the tangible device was that copy machine. But as we all know, in Northwest Arkansas, we were good old boys back in that day. And if you knew somebody and you did good things, the word spread. And we tried to stay very committed to a promise with that tangible device. And then the next thing you know, relationships started to grow and trust started to grow within the community. And, we had a lot of competition. And we talked about it earlier that the aspect of what did our competitors say? And when you're new in the business, and we competed with about 5 players at the time, we were going to go broke. We were going to be one of those guys that was a flash in the pan and be gone tomorrow. And they told that story to a lot of Northwest Arkansas. And we just kept plugging away and plugging away and plugging away. And amazingly enough, what we found was there was a lot of aspects that maybe there were existing providers that were taking advantage of the relationship. So we established a lot of relationships before we even sold them a piece of paper. Staying true to follow up and just, we're going to be here and so on and so forth. And, as it grew, the industry evolved. It became more to a point so that now, rather than just plugging into the wall with power, we plugged into the wall with a network, and it became a printer, and that evolution started to happen. And quite frankly, if indeed I would have known that that's where the industry was going, it had intimidated me to death. Because, the background doesn't show high education with my background, but commitment to customers was something that we stayed true to. So that evolution kind of started to happen, and then that moves us into probably, 15, 20 years ago. And we were blowing and going, and things were good and just vertical. And you can imagine the evolution that happened when COVID hit. You guys were talking about that earlier. Here we are doing all of that, and things are great. And I literally remember the day that they said everything was going to shut down, and I evaluated, man, I gotta go in and see how much money we got in the bank, because I need to identify what our sustainability is. I'm not going to lay anybody off. Everybody's going to have a job until the very end, and we stayed committed to that. We didn't terminate a soul, and industry analysts definitely emphasize that, there's a piece of this business that's never going to come back, because people are working from home, and those prints on paper inside that office are just, they had to figure out different ways to do it. And these guys can tell you now that was a myth. It's back. It's booming. But so is our business, and the evolution now says, in these guys' eras, it's substantially more than a copier business. So that story, they can definitely tell better than I can. In regards to remembering that we use a tangible device to provide a vehicle, but really what we identify with is just listen to the customer. Every situation is different, and we want to mold a program that best suits our client.
Did you grow up here in Rogers, or where did you grow up?
I grew up in Elkins.
Okay.
Outside of Fayetteville. Yeah.
Wow. And
I moved there from Palm Springs, California when I was 10. So it was a little bit of a culture shock. So long hair and flip-flops wasn't something that went over real well in Elkins. So, or skateboards, nowhere to ride them. But I have two brothers, and we moved to Elkins from Palm Springs. And, I think the growing up, and I would tell you today that I would call it a boot camp, that we grew up on 100 acres and we had cattle and we did hay and all of the above. But the thing that it definitely taught us is that, you don't have any options. You do have to get up and go to work every day at a very young age. So in growing up in Elkins, graduated in 83, thought I wanted to try college. So I tried it and didn't care for it too much.
Yep.
So did a semester.
University of Arkansas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Evolved out of trying that and got into classified advertising sales.
Wow.
And did that for about 9 months. Evolved into selling long distance service for a local company. And then that evolved into an application with Marvin Gray in 1986. The business was literally less than 2 months old when I interviewed with him. And amazingly enough, he was a good enough sales guy that I took a substantial pay cut to make the change. And that's when real boot camp started. I mean, this guy was a monomaniac. And but the impressive part that I had in regards to that part of my life is that I was so amazed that a 40-year-old guy could work this hard. And he used a word, and it was everywhere. He used the word momentum. And man, when we would close a deal, there was no celebration. It was on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. And we were on a mission.
Yeah.
And the market was in pretty good shape for us to do what we did.
And just so everyone knows listening, that is what Professional Business Systems is today. Same company.
Same company.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. It evolved. We bought 100% of the shares. Actually March the 7th, 2011. So today is the anniversary of that. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been really good.
So at the time, when you joined up with him, was it just you two?
It was himself, kind of a friend of the family that was another, kind of assisted with deliveries and stuff like that. His wife and 2 technicians and 1 receptionist. And the crazy part is, that we started this scenario of saying guaranteed 4-hour response time. And when we would make the call, we have 2 service technicians. Our very first customer was Washington Regional. By the way, they're still our customer today. Wow. We literally placed 7 units at the time. And when I started, part of my responsibility on a daily basis was to see every one of those 7 machines and make sure that end user was still in love with the promises that we made. And of course, also ask for referrals and everything else. But we had 2 service technicians and 7 machines in the field, and we guarantee 4-hour response time. These guys didn't have anything to do. And we used ratios. There were industry benchmarks and ratios and so on and so forth. But every ratio that would say, you get so many machines in the field, you add a tech and so on and so forth. When we would get 70-75% to what benchmark said, we'd add a tech because we wanted to continue to underpromise and overdeliver. And the impression I would gamble to say still today is, how in the world do you guys do it? I mean, are you sitting in the parking lot? Because we call you and you're here. And we continue to be a little bit heavy from a personnel standpoint, that drives a satisfaction level that's hard to compete with.
Mm.
It's very hard to compete with, because if indeed you're managing off spreadsheets and financial statements and so on and so forth, it doesn't always make sense to be overstaffed.
Mm-hmm.
But the commitment level and the impression that you can make with clientele is obviously
significant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So bring us back to those early days. Marvin Gray.
Yeah.
Landing your first client. I mean, do you remember what that was like? I mean, I imagine back then too, Washington Regional was still that'd still be a big client to land as your first client. So what were those emotions like?
So in the beginning, oh gosh, this is dinosaur days. But we had 3 models. You had this 30-page per minute box, and then you had a little 12-page per minute. We called them bologna slicers because the top moved back and forth. And then you had a mid-size machine that was, I think, 15 pages a minute. And I won't forget it. The first day on the street, he sent me to Sunset in Springdale and said, just calling every business up and down that street. You should be busy all day. And I came back in the end of the day and I said, Marv, everybody's got one of these. I mean, who do we sell them to? He's like, you don't sell them. Very limited times you go in and sell them brand new. You replace what they have. And the technology that we have is better than what they have. Okay. So you'd make calls and and you never walked in and said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called. We're in the market for a machine. It didn't happen. So you had to, what do you like? And establish a relationship and all the above. And the first landed transaction, I can't remember. But the emphasis of what I had to learn as a young sales guy, the little bologna slicer, 12 pages a minute machine was like $1,100. Easy sale, right? Well, this 30-page per minute machine you could build it to a point so it'd be $7,000 to $10,000. Well, I would walk in and they'd have these big boxes, and I would say, well, you need just 12-page per minute machine. I mean, $900. We can make a deal. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't the capacity machine to do what they needed to do. So you learn and so on and so forth. But what I remember about the early days, we made lots of calls and lots of discipline in regards to staying committed to that plan. I mean, you wore a suit and tie back in that day. And in 90-degree, 90% humidity days, you wore a suit and tie. And I'd like to feel like that we in that era we kind of set the standard. And numerous competitors, you became friends of theirs and so on and so forth. They were a little disappointed that we brought up that standard, and then those guys had to start wearing a tie and coat and so on and so forth. So we had a corporate organization in our marketplace called Modern Business Systems at the time that was founded in Missouri, and those guys were the other suits. So, but they weren't local. And
was the office in Rogers from the inception?
So everybody knows where Evelyn Hills is, right? In Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We rented 1,500 square feet there.
Wow. And
it was a wide open retail space that in the very beginning, my father-in-law, which is Marvin Gray, that's an entirely different story, but he bought 100 of the big machines and then 100 small machines. So we used those copiers to create offices. We literally established where we just break it up and we just stacked them to the ceiling, and you went through a little opening that was all copiers in the side. And Marvin, I remember him saying that we would get phone calls after we do a proposal and somebody would call and make an offer, and he'd look at all these copiers and go, you know what, I'll take it because it's better that I go ahead and get rid of some of these. And what we thought, inventory was going to be maybe last us the first 6 months, we were ready for another purchase in about 90 days.
Wow.
We were slinging them that fast. In the evolution of what transpired, there was a lot of there was another organization that my father-in-law did work for, that he worked in Northwest Arkansas Territory for 8 years prior to opening his own. Minolta at the time, it wasn't Conica Minolta at that time, but Minolta called him, offered him his franchise, and he said yes, mortgaged the farm, took the risk, did, the American dream aspect, and off we went. But he took a chance. And I really believe that's why he worked the way that he worked. He wasn't going to fail. And some of those disciplines with accenting what I grew up with was a perfect mix. A lot of respect, a lot of this doesn't make sense. So I have to admit, though, that there was a time that he pushed too hard and I resigned. And so I was gone for a stretch of about 3 or 4 months. And that's where the dynamic of going back to, I moved to California. I had parents that lived in California, and I was going to go back to college, play baseball, everything else. I was 21 years old. And my mom was going to underwrite that idea, and she was ecstatic. But I had one last dream to make one farewell to Northwest Arkansas, and came to Northwest Arkansas over the Christmas holidays. And people might say that it was the mistake of my life, but I asked Marvin to go to lunch, because the way I departed probably wasn't as smooth as it could have been. So we went to lunch, and I made the decision that this is where I need to be. I was in California, and everywhere I went, I was looking at these copiers and all these, and what am I doing? And I'd caught the bug, is what they said. And I came back, and the rest is history.
And were you dating his daughter at the time? while all this was going on?
I knew it had to come in at some point.
Her mom, Marcia, super lady. And she asked me if I would take her to the prom. And I'm like, no. At all. Again, 21, and I'm going to a high school prom. Probably not real high on my list, right? But I said, if she doesn't find a date and she doesn't want to do anything, I mean, we can go to dinner. So she didn't go to the prom, and we went to dinner, and that was the first. One of the aspects that I shared with Marvin is that I'm going to come back to work, and these things we said to each other, I said it first, and then he committed to it. I said, I'm going to be real serious. I'm going to listen to what you teach me. I'm going to execute your plan, and we'll see how we do. But here's the deal we're going to make. I'm not going to quit, and you can't fire me. And there's going to be days both of us want to do it, and we can't do it. And sure enough, there were days that had that. But what happened with Marisha in that dynamic is that I said, I'm going to be serious. I want to work. I don't want a relationship. Let's, obviously we got married March the 4th, 1989. And when I came back, it was 1988. So I kind of modified the plan. But
wow,
it's been fantastic.
That's awesome.
And when you say you caught the bug, what'd you like about the industry? What was,
imagine, of course, 21 years old, and our target was that I would literally put 25 business cards in my pocket and wouldn't cheat. You couldn't go in the office, and if I met you two guys, I couldn't give away 2 cards and call it. If I met you guys, I'd call that one call. And every day I was committed to distributing 25 cards, 25 calls, 25 contacts, and then make good notes and so on and so forth. And the bug is that amazingly enough, when you would follow up and you'd use things to, have you even seen your current provider and those type of things? And I'm not going to say it was easy. It was hard. It's raw selling, making 25 calls a day. And, but Northwest Arkansas, I wouldn't say that everybody, just wanted to give you a hug when you called on them. You were a copier salesman. I mean, and our description of our industry is that you're this much ahead of a used car salesman, because there was a lot of them out there. But there wasn't a lot of consistency. They'd get in and get out, get in, get out. And then, I was competing with guys that were Marvin's age or older. And the bug for me was I told Marvin in the original interview that my favorite sport was baseball, and the career that I wanted to pursue was something that I could feel like when I went to work every day was I was getting to take the field and look at it like hit me the ball. I want to make the play. And man, when you're in something that feels like you're making efforts that your competition's not, just it felt pretty stinking good.
Step up to the plate.
Yeah, and we did, and we swung it.
Yeah,
we were not loved by all of our competitors at all, because how do we build a business? We took their customers. That's what we did, and we did it pretty strong. It still happens. The bug, man, I think it was just the people, the reception of if indeed we committed to the promise, and we did, man. We did not. We had a scenario, and if indeed we would guaranteed for our response time every day, we would see in the sales organization how many calls we pulled, who we serviced, and what our response time was. And the truth of the matter is, I would say to a client, if indeed you did business with us, if indeed we fail you on 4 hours, you're not going to have to tell us. We're going to tell you. And it did happen, guys. Wow. But I asked the client in the very beginning, if indeed it does happen, what do you want to have happen? You want to cancel the contract? You want to do anything in regards to that's extraordinary? Tell me what you want and we'll do it. But surprisingly enough, when we would get those reports, and trust me, it might have happened in the worst year 4 times a year. But we'd get in our car, we'd drive to our decision maker, we'd sit in front of them and say, it happened yesterday. And I'm back to the table asking you, what do you want us to do? Man, it's no big deal. And relax. Things are good. We love you guys. But we admitted it.
Wow.
And, you would see all around this office, but there's wired, but there's a word that's inside wired that we utilize as our standards, and that's integrity. And we want to sleep at night. We want to be able to tell the truth and feel good that, we're not out here telling you about a used car that we have no idea where it came from, who drove it, who crashed it, anything else. If it's not what we promised, we'll make it right. And we have. So,
yeah, we're going to see you at the grocery store the next day.
Yeah.
You say that. And one of the things that we used to describe to clients is that Walmart, of course, in Walmart country, we go to Walmart and we don't want to see you in an aisle and have to duck down the other aisle because that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I think if we look at Northwest Arkansas, there's a lot of us that have been around a while. That's the way we grow our business. So
it's special. It's intangible. So going back to those early days, what was the service? What were you selling? I think you talked about a few different, the bologna slicer. What is a copier for someone who, right? A lot of people know what a printer is, but like back in those days, and then kind of talk about when the shift went from to what, when we walk in an office today, what we know.
How long's Mark been here?
1998.
1998. So the evolution in 1998, as I said, you plugged the copier into the wall for power. And at that time, you needed originals to put them on the glass to make duplicates of those. Yep. Okay. And you guys don't go way back that far, but that used to be this way. And this copier was magic, man. You'd give it a stack of 50 originals in the document feeder and ask it for 20 sets and push sort, and you'd come back in 10 minutes and it's all done, stapled in the corner. And oh my gosh, it's an efficiency tool that goes into the office that changes people's lives, right? That's the industry I got into, because the ones that we replaced didn't have a lot of those options. So it was replicating an original. So is what it did. But in 1998, digital technology became, so then the originals would be scanned, stored in a digital memory, and then you tell it what you wanted to do. Now, the evolution started to happen to a point so that now as the workplace became networked and we could scan that document, now we can scan it to your workstation, right? Now we can do anything that we want. And guess what happened to the industry? Everybody in our industry in those days were going, where's our print volume going to go? It continued to soar. It was overstated. It continued to do what it's supposed to do because I don't know if you guys have never done it, but when email became a tool that we used in business, old guys like myself, I would never rely if I read it on the screen, I'd print it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd make my notes on it and I'd have a call and, do all the things that I needed to do with this thing. It seems
He still
it's dinosaurs.
Yeah,
today.
I do too.
And when it became digital, it just enhanced the need for better service, which was another shot in the arm for us to say, man, they got to rely. And we would make calls, and a lot of the things that we would say were, what do you figure that inside your office, what are the most important tools that you use on a daily basis? Well, back in the day, guys, it was a telephone. Mm-hmm. And you'd put them on hold with a little red button, and then you'd yell across the hall and tell them that Joe's on the line, and Susie'd pick it up and talk to him, right? That was the phone. It didn't have a cell phone. So, okay, what happens to your business when that goes down? We're out. Well, the next tool that they used inside their office that was just as strong of a contender of being a primary piece of equipment was a copier. Well, when it went down, and think about Washington Regional with those copiers. If it's down and there's a patient in the emergency room, we had 2 in the emergency room, by the way. If that copier went down, they couldn't do anything. Yeah. Copy your driver's license, copy your insurance card, all of those key aspects that run that business in everybody's business. Mm-hmm. Well, if they're down, they're out. Mm-hmm. And then you go into a lot of business to business calls, and they didn't have multiple machines. So imagine that device being number 2 behind the telephone, and you wait 2 or 3 days for service. Yeah. Yikes. Yeah. Right? So then the solution became, well, you need 2. Why do you need 2 when you get guaranteed 4-hour response time? And for years, I don't know what it is today, but for years, our average response time is less than an hour and a half. That's crazy. Yeah. And we love to think that we want to spoil our customer. And 4 hours sounds great. They love the idea. But then when you come in and under promise and over deliver and you give them an average, we do quarterly reviews with a client. In that quarterly review, we shared volume information because they told us what they thought they ran. Mm. We showed them what they actually ran. We showed them every service call that we placed on the machine during that 90-day period. We showed them exactly every call, how long it took us to get here, and admitted that if indeed we were failing. But surprisingly enough, it exceeded what we promised. Mm. They loved it. They loved it.
So were you and Marvin both very metric driven from the beginning? I mean, was that part of the business? Hey, we're going to track these things. We're going to show these to our customers. We're going to
in Marvin's era, we didn't do it.
Okay.
Marvin's era, we didn't do it. We literally saw the calls, the service calls, but we didn't take that element of service back to the client. And you can imagine, guys. I mean, we were adding customers a lot by the month. Mm. And in order to do something like that, I can see Marvin assessing. I mean, we probably did that once a year, but Marvin would assess that time that we would do on a quarterly basis. Granted, it's great for the relationship, but it's taking us away from selling time. Mm-hmm. There's so much potential. We got to get new clients. And we did.
And were you focused on driving to Tulsa or Little Rock, or was this just? I mean, we are in Northwest Arkansas.
1986 business. When we opened. Marvin actually had a branch in Springfield, Missouri and Joplin, Missouri. Mm. And Joplin closed relatively soon. He had partners. But I joined when we still had Springfield, and the work ethic that we had at this location, I mean, even our own team, we smoked them. Mm. And not that they weren't good people, and I love them all to death still today. It just, and Marvin did not accept anything less than what we were doing. And were those guys in their own mind driving success? I think they thought that way. And so when they broke off away from us, they existed for a long time. Mm. but I don't think that they had the same desire. We always talk about it. How in the world will you ever know that you get big if indeed all you focus on is giving good service?
Yeah.
And if indeed all we're chasing is a higher number, you'll be really surprised if indeed you just want to continue to focus on good service. It happens, and it's surprisingly, it just continues to happen. The evolution, I'd love to be able to say we've never lost a customer, but what do we typically lose for? Is a competitor comes in and they provide a story that says we are just as good as they are, except cheaper. And cheap and good have never gone in alignment with what we believe. And if indeed cheap is an aspect that you want to chase versus those two marrying together and making for a good relationship and value, unfortunately, you might have to leave. But amazingly enough, some of the ones that have left have come back.
Yeah.
And that's not a cocky scenario. We get it. We appreciate it. We keep calling on them. We keep asking how those other guys are doing. And when the opportunity comes up again, we get another shot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the service back then, would you sell the actual copier? Like y'all would sell it, or they would go buy it from somewhere else? They'd buy it from you, and then it's a recurring service that is we agree on X amount per month, and we're going to make sure that anytime there's a problem, we're here to fix it. Is that kind of the model of the business early on?
Great question. Everybody sold them, and then everybody sold a service contract. And of course, when we say sell them, there is financing alternatives inside the industry that you would use to lease that box to those clients. Well, then they had a relationship. It's kind of like buying a car. I used to say it all the time. Remember Don Nelms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Don would sell the car, and then Don would use GMAC to finance that car. Don got his money. I'm done. And GMAC would finance it with the client. Well, what we thought was, what would you say if indeed we said, we'll help you with the finance and we'll also attach it to satisfaction. So if indeed you want to get our attention in that monthly lease, if we're not making you happy, just don't pay us. So we became internally financed company. So when we would bring the solution per se, and a proposal would come in and say, this is what the copier is outright purchase. If you want to write us a check, this is what it is to lease it. That's another relationship. Then here's what our service is over here. So now you've got three options in how you want to partner with us. Mm-hmm. And we said, X all three of those out. Let's just make one option. And let's let you drive. And when you drive, we included that, encompassed all in one payment and on those quarterly reviews and so on and so forth. The client could have peaks and valleys, and we could make modifications. If indeed you bought too small or you bought too big and you wanted to modify before you got to the end. Well, imagine going to GMC and trying to get a payoff, right? And you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
We would probably make the call and make recommendations. You're not using what you said you were going to use. Let's modify this agreement. Or you're using it way too hard. Let's add another unit. So on and so forth. Better serve you. We got to know them. Mm-hmm. And we got to know their workplace. Mm-hmm. I mean, we'd walk into offices like ourselves, and if offices are all throughout and you got one box and there's somebody walking, 50 feet to get a print, we better modify this. We can give you better service. We can figure out how to make this work. We did it all the time.
Yeah. So it's clear from the inception, customer satisfaction was the biggest differentiator. Was that a new differentiator when you started to carry the cost of capital for buying the equipment? Was that a new differentiator, or were other people doing that in the market at the time?
So I know you guys are all confident and understand commercial real estate, and there's a lot of similarities. We buy a building and we're going to rent to our tenants, right? Well, we need our tenants' rent in order to make our deal work. So as we internally financed, you're exactly right. We had a need for an extended amount of capital, because as we were growing, the amount of, there'd be months we'd sell $500,000 worth of gear, and we had to finance it.
Mm-hmm.
But the risk in financing, if indeed you weren't providing good customer service and we gave them the ability to cancel, holy cow, it could get risky. So in the beginning, we would borrow, and the typical scenario would be is that in our industry, the average contract length is 60 months. We would go to the client, get that arrangement made, and then we would borrow our money based on cost and finance it for 36. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't have much margin after we paid them and paid our tech and paid for supplies. Yeah. But when you got to the 37th month and you repetitively did this as you grew your business, and those got to the 37th month and they were still satisfied, no more equipment payment, you got to start banking that residual. And then after probably the first 10 years, we were operating debt free.
Wow.
And now we own a leasing portfolio and a leasing company that here sits the standard in the industry that you've got product and service and supplies that are 3 devices that you can generate profit with. Well, you got this other one now inside ours, that's the leasing company, that also says how strong our commitment is. We want you to trust us. And not only do we want you to trust us, we're going to give you a piece of ammunition that maybe doesn't exist everywhere. And we did it.
So is that new? Was that novel back then?
Unfortunately, the same organization that my father-in-law worked for, that was an organization called DOS Office Solutions, Office Systems. And back in that era, you could take your copier, your equipment, your service, your supplies, and bundle it. So now let's say we would have sold that hardware, for an example, of $250 a month, and then the other bundle was $250, but you had to kind of do that on the come, right? Well, back in that time, you could take that contract and then sell it to a leasing company, the total contract, before you ever pulled one service call or delivered one bottle of toner. Okay? And it got really top heavy. Well, that company went down. And then it said to everybody how important internal leasing was. Because imagine, and these guys were pretty good size, imagine being able to do that. And I remember the numbers back in that day, but this guy walked out, on months where they'd have a good month and they'd sell the whole contract group together. And a guy that's probably selling a couple $100,000 worth of copiers a month, he'd walk away with $750,000. And it got very dangerous. Obviously. Well, they went broke. And then they got sued. And then some of them, I think, it might have been worse.
Yeah. So did y'all have to raise capital, or where did the capital come from in the beginning? You talked about all the machines y'all had back in the Fayetteville office. Was that just operating capital y'all were rolling into the business, or?
We established a relationship. Of course, in the beginning, we just had debt.
Yeah.
When we would do that transaction, we'd take our contract into the bank, and that same $500 a month, we would show them the equipment portion, and then we would show them, what we needed, because we only borrowed the cost. We didn't borrow the margin. And they'd loan us against that contract. And that contract became our leverage. Okay. And then they would give that contract back as paid off at the end of 36 months. And then, of course, we dreamed about, getting to that 37th month every time. And then, imagine the month when you did that $500,000 and you got to 37 months. Yeah. And the sigh of relief over and over and over again every month that we did that.
Yeah.
So, and when you started to get, Marvin retired March the 1st, 1996. And we had a very successful business at that time. And all of the dreams that Marvin had, I think for the most part, he checked all the boxes in regards to owning a business, because he was able to. He wasn't 50 yet. He bought a motorhome with his wife, and they started doing what they did. And But when when I came to the table, I saw a tremendous amount of potential in Northwest Arkansas that we needed to leverage again. And we were walking away and we were selling to our third party leasing partners. And I didn't think that was what we needed to do. I thought that Northwest Arkansas was still ripe to enjoy the benefits of our original commitments. And for about the first 18 months, he said no to any mortgage. And I mean, I did everything. I'd go down and get us pre-approved and take the documents. And at that particular time, we didn't even own 50% of the company then. So he still made all those decisions. So finally, after about 12 months, I made a presentation of all the sales that we'd done third party, and showed him what the amount of revenue would have been if indeed we would have internally financed it, and all of the benefits of it. And it took 6 months after that presentation for him to say, finally, we got $1 million line of credit. And that was a good shot in the arm that we had back in the mid to late 90s. And then, when you start using those type of numbers, and then we worked that all the way up to $2.5 million line of credit. And we operate debt free now, and have for a long time.
So what would you say to a young owner who, is looking at starting something or has started something, and debt's a part of that equation? What advice would you give to them?
Know all of it. Know what you're committing to. I think about it all the time because now I do commercial development. You want to think inside a business, it's just as important as real estate from a location standpoint. And if indeed your tangible is what you feel like the market will bear, and you know that you can support the promise that you make to be confident in that leverage, that's how we all kind of get started. And I think the majority of the time that you come in, especially as a new entrepreneur, it's tough. And not all times do we have the money to do it. So the bank's a very important partner. Speaking of that, in regards to those banking partners that we had, I said it even to my guy at Legacy Bank, Gary Kleck. Gary was at Arvest forever, and he left and did Parkway Bank with Jerry Carmichael, and that didn't have quite the success because we had that little dip in our market that happened. We all know that. But, if your banker is a partner that believes in you, but is also strong enough to a point that you're taking a risk, that I'm not saying no to the loan, I'm saying no to the idea. That's a killer partnership. And I promised today, could I have made the presentation to other bankers? I'm sure I could have, but we wouldn't have been here today if Gary wouldn't have loaned me the money to buy the business in 2011. And it's all win though. We paid it off, and he feels good about what he did, but we couldn't have done it without him.
Before we move on to the mid life cycle of the business, as you think about Marvin, is there one thing that you're like, Marvin drilled this into my brain? It sounds like sales was a big part of that. What's the biggest kind of learning you had from him?
Do it for all the right reasons. The thing that I think that I'm in a better position today is there was an aspect of his desire to be in business for a monetary aspect. It needed to produce. He had a dream in regards to what he wanted it to produce. I didn't have those dreams. I came from Elkins, Arkansas. The part of the dream and what did Marvin give me? I say it all the time to these guys: drive at 5. And how do you feel when you start your car at the end of the day? And one of the things that we use inside our EOS system is why. Why do we do what we do? And and we say something that I believe not everybody can relate to, and maybe everybody relates to it in a certain way that says, how do you get your hands around that? But helping people live fulfilled lives with a copier company, that's the tangible device. But how we help people live fulfilled lives is that I don't want them to worry about a commitment that they had to make with us. I want that relationship to provide confidence that when you do business with us, you can forget about it. In all the guys that call on you over the years, I mean, welcome them in. Competition's great. Make sure we're telling you what we should be telling you. But I'm trying to think of in regards to what Marvin taught me. Your word's critical. It's critical. And where you guys hear me say that we can never identify that we're getting to be a big company, I feel like stay true to your word. Trust the outcome. Not everybody operates that way. Sometimes when that customer that you did assist, and if they're not true to their word, somehow, some way, that relationship goes away. So I would say that about Marv.
That's good. So 1996, you buy in as part owner and you kind of take the lead. He retires. Talk through some of those kind of years of taking over, starting to make some of those calls, what that was like, leading an organization.
I remember Marvin wanted a copy of the deposit slip every day. Every day. And we faxed it to him because we didn't have technology at the time. So we faxed it to him at his little office downtown Rogers. And I had to meet with him every Tuesday morning. And one of the things that I'm super proud of is I was in the seat for about a month, and you can imagine the level of confidence that you have with the guys that turn the screwdrivers and the service promise and respond and smile and make that relationship secure. I kind of felt like I was in a position that I needed to do something to really get them to follow my leadership. And the industry kind of supported it. Sales guys, it was a big separation. Here's all these service guys that were really securing the promise, and here's all the sales guys out here blowing and going, which exists in a lot of industries, I'm sure. But I took it upon myself to give a pay raise across the board to all my service guys, a month in the seat. Didn't ask for permission. And that Tuesday morning, after we did that, I, of course, had to go in and tell him that that's what I'd done. And you guys can imagine what that was like. He was not happy. So that was kind of our first crossroad. And of course, 30 days into the job, I thought, make it or break it. I said, well, we got a decision to make. Either you have to take it back and go back and do my job, or you can trust me that we did the right thing, and I'll stay in the job. But you got to give me some time. That expense will make up in our sales in 90 days. Just give us the opportunity to do it. And he committed to 90 days to see if we do it. We blew it away in 60. And those type of things were what I did when I didn't ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't have done myself. That's the thing that I'm trying to encourage these guys to do. I was more of a hands-on guy. I was in the office early, tried to beat everybody there. I was always in the one, trying to be the last one to leave. My wedding day, I said my wedding day. It was rehearsal that night on Friday, but I literally couldn't believe it. We got married at Cooper Chapel in Bella Vista, and our office was where it was on 8th Street, and rehearsal was like at 6:30, and I was at the office at 6 o'clock, closing the office. Nobody else is there, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? But that's kind of the way it was. And that type of structure and that type of discipline existed for a long time. There was a few guys that over the years were sales guys that worked with me, Fred Fryer and Chris Meyer. And those guys were employed by us for, I think Fred was 14 years, 13 or 14 years. Chris was 14 or 15 years. And, man, we had a ball. We had a ball. There's a lot of other guys that came and went, because I think it's kind of like Van Horn's baseball team. You know, we're on a mission here, and we don't want to just play the game. We want to go all the way to the top. And if you wanted to come and get a sales job because sales was easy, we weren't the place to hang out. The guys, the Chris's and the Freds, I mean, they made it on numerous occasions where they'd have a good week through Thursday, and they'd call me on Fridays and say, you know, I'm thinking about going to have a beer at lunch. And, you know, my answer was always the same. You do whatever you got to do, buddy. Do whatever you got to do. Where are you at? I'm still working. And we don't kid ourselves. We had a beer or two, but we worked.
Yeah.
And
so 2010, 2011, you take full ownership of PBS.
Yep.
And are there more changes kind of that come in that early time frame? Or what do those kind of years look like for y'all?
You know, it was new. What I probably what I worked toward the most in regards to that era was not having to answer on a daily basis. And the business was thriving. So,
and this is coming out of 2008. Like, there's a couple bad years probably.
We had some corrections too back in that day.
Yeah.
Sure. The thing I always said that I wanted to do, if indeed I ever got to own the entire company, was I wanted to give the community, give back more to the community. And Marvin and I, as of 2 or 3 years ago, we were both in Durango, Colorado during the summer, and we were talking about that. And we never talked about it after we purchased. And Marvin was a giver as well. But he had no idea what we were giving back. And that conversation that we had that day, I floored him. And because he thought he gave good, and we did give good, but we give better now. And we're one of those, and I think our family is. We kind of want to fly under the radar. I don't need somebody to give us a bunch of praises in regards to that. We feel like the community's been good to us. We're gonna be good to the community back. And those are some of the things that make you sleep good at night.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So 2011, 2012, Chris Meyer, which was still with me at the time, this is kind of a funny story. So he comes in and tells me that he and a couple guys at church are going to go start a new church in North Carolina. And I've talked good employees off the ledge before to stay. But I'd never had to compete with God. So I thought, you probably need to go. But he gave me a year's notice.
Wow.
And, I really thought at that time, what in the world? He was my man. I mean, he was my guy. And then I thought, I'll re-engage and I'll start doing all of those roles and responsibilities again. That didn't sound attractive. So in very short order, he said, you got a fantastic family. And he wanted to train Mitch. And that's good. And I always thought, I want them to go establish themselves, and then if they wanted to come back to the business, they could after they experienced every place else. But of course, God had a different plan. He went to work with Chris. About a year, Chris left. Mitchell probably saw a different side of me, working with me, and these guys were raised in regards to a statement that I use all the time. I'm not mad. I just play intense. And when you put us on the business field, we played intense, and we were going to make it happen. And they stepped up.
Yeah, I don't know that it was. I don't know that it was a different side of him. It was really reassuring in the consistency of what we grew up with, and how that cascaded into the business aspect. That was a pretty unique situation. Obviously, grew up and knew Chris's influence on the business, and Chris really knew where Dad was at. I typically say Matt, where Dad was at. He knew where I was at. I mean, he knew that. I didn't know that the family business. I didn't know if that was for me, and I had enough respect for Chris when he approached me that I said, hey, you know what, I'll do it. I was finishing up junior year of college. Senior year didn't have much in store. I was pretty ahead of schedule, so I had the time. Mm-hmm. I thought the time was going to be spent with a part-time gig and play golf and hang out, but I did. I had enough respect for Chris that I was like, hey, let's do it. But I had some absolutes because he knew that I did not want to come in and be Matt's kid. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to ride coattails. And the thing that Dad didn't share that I'll share, 2010, 2011, and the balance of that acquisition, it was pretty straining. To be totally honest, I was graduating high school as a freshman in college. Matthew was still at home. And we did have cell phones. We got cell phones at later in life than what kids get them these days. But, we stayed in touch, and it was pretty taxing. And, that made a pretty big impression on me in the fact of, hey, this is my grandfather and my dad. And I just saw what our family went through. And I was like, man, I don't ever want to be in that position. Ever. Mm-hmm. Ever want to be in the position that I just lived through. But I had enough respect for Chris. Obviously, a tremendous amount of respect for Dad. We did it. The absolutes were I couldn't have business cards. I didn't want people to associate my last name going in and out of these businesses with Matt. I wanted to learn the business. Yeah. I wanted to see what we did. I met a lot of great people in that 12-month period of time. But man, I had a different level of appreciation for this business. Had different perspective, and what went into what this business became, but the livelihood that it afforded me. Mm-hmm. And so, Chris, that was June of 2014. I graduated in May. We did a weekend trip, myself, Dad, and Matthew, to Talladega. Got home on a Sunday, and I went to work on Monday. Yeah. Yeah. And, I knew I had 45 days really with Chris before he was gone. Mm. And not that I didn't have 12 months before, but reality was starting to sink in. And, I was working in an outside sales capacity. I was doing some things on the operational side. I mean, I was still learning the business. I was still very, very green. But I knew I had to gain the respect, of not just the clientele, but I also had to earn that respect with our people. I don't remember the number, as far as employees that we had in 2013. Round numbers, let's say it was 30 folks, and there was a lot of tenure. There was a lot of tenure that, was here when my grandfather was here. There was a lot of tenure that obviously stayed committed through that evolution. And so here I was, third generation. I had to earn that trust. But June of 2014, man, I fell in love with it. Fell in love with the relationships. I fell in love with what this vehicle was. I tell people all the time, there's nothing sexy about a copier. There's nothing sexy about a piece of equipment that puts print on paper, but man, it was a heck of a vehicle that afforded us a lot of opportunity to meet people and assist with their needs and their wants. And, really the rest is history. But, the first, there was some arrangements between my dad and I that we wanted to accomplish in the first 5 years being 14 to 19. And, you heard him say, did he get real thrilled about having to get back to doing things that he hadn't done for a long time? But he did. He did it for me. He did it for the business because I think in the first 6 months, the whole sales organization turned over in its entirety.
Oh, wow.
So it was he and I.
Yeah.
Your first 6 months, or
my first 6 months, okay. 2014, June to say the end of the year, okay. The whole sales organization turns over. We probably had 4 to 5 outside salespeople at that point, and really went to the two of us. So that was a reality check. I mean, I was 21 years old. I was 21 years old in 2014. And so we went to work, man, and had to embrace it. And we embraced it from top to bottom. I mean, he took, our business is very, like most. I mean, 80% of our revenue came from about 20% of the portfolio, and that's where he went. And I went to the 80% of the portfolio that did about 20% of the revenue. And met a lot of people, was fortunate to establish trust and retain those relationships, and had to start, embracing leadership and management responsibility and building a team. And my first hire, and it was a joint hire because obviously I didn't know what I was doing, and Dad participated, was an individual in Justin Combs. Justin's still here, which is really, really cool. Very committed individual, hustler, neat story. A lot of similarity with Justin's story and Dad's story. He grew up in West Fork, and he came out of the banking industry, and met each other through a mutual acquaintance here locally. And, I didn't know a whole heck of a lot of what I was doing. He sure as heck didn't know what he was doing. And so we confided in each other, and, we made some hires along the way, surrounded ourselves with some good people, some of which we were fortunate to retain for an amount of time to be proud of. But Justin's the only one that's still here, from that initial position of stepping into management. We don't have enough time to elaborate on all the time in between, but Matthew graduated college in 18. He was very much like me, and he deserves the opportunity to tell his story, but he thought he'd come try this thing out. So he came to work with me. At the same time, he had a peer that we knew very, very well, and really families knew each other. I didn't know Alex that well, but the families knew each other, and he came from what my grandfather used to say was good stock. And Alex McClung and Matthew started same day, June something, 2018. And, it was a different aspect of leadership. I mean, it was my brother. But it was really the first opportunity for me to mentor. And I felt like my responsibility to those two specifically is I trained them on everything that he had trained me on. Mm-hmm. And Matthew says it all the time. I mean, I think they were in a classroom, of which was an office, the two of them, for maybe the first 6 months of their career. A lot of whiteboard sessions, mm-hmm. A lot of crash course, a lot of making calls with me out in the field. And it was, pretty interesting. We're going in and out of these various businesses, and I got 2 of them. Yeah. There's 3 of us coming in to talk to somebody about their copy.
How many guys is it take?
It looked like it took a lot for a while.
Yeah.
It looked like a takeover. But, after that 6 months, Matthew, he took on a Fayetteville territory. Alex took on a northeast Benton County territory, Rogers and Carroll County. Alex's family was very established in Carroll County, so it was a little strategic, letting his last name carry some weight over there, and he did a great job. Great job. But, I guess 2 years into their tenure, COVID set in. And you heard a little bit about COVID. COVID was a very interesting time. We were rocking and rolling. We had accomplished a lot of the things that we set out to achieve in that first 5 years, but on the back half of that 5 years was COVID. Everybody went home. We did not know what to anticipate. I mean, when you service 750 businesses in Northwest Arkansas and, a lot of them went home, it was interesting. But you talk about the loyalty that we were able to establish with that clientele and the commitment that those clients made to us was astounding.
And were you having people calling you at the time saying, "Hey, we're not going to pay for the service agreement"?
You had all the above, man. I mean, you had people that were in a situation that their businesses were just as impacted as ours.
Yeah.
Right. And so, our goal in those types of scenarios is how do we create win-win? How do we satisfy what you need and still satisfy some of what we need? We did a lot of that. Some we weren't for. I mean, their situation just didn't allow. And we were very flexible in that time frame. But then there were clients on the other side of the spectrum. And it's like, hey man, we're committed. And that commitment is what carried us through COVID.
You heard me say earlier to accent what he's saying, that part of the benefit of internal financing is that rather than the client call us and say, I can't pay, we were making calls saying, we understand where you're at. We're coming to see you.
Yeah.
We're going to make this something to a point so that we want you to know we're committed to where your business is at, not where it was. And we trusted the relationship strong enough that when it did turn, they'd remember. And they have. This Northwest Arkansas thing, and I guess when you align yourself with a customer and an organization like we have, and a lot of loyalty that comes to the surface is never talked about, but it exists.
Very much so. And, just thinking about it as we're talking, there were 3 industries that probably carried us through COVID: healthcare, finance, and real estate. And fortunate, we had some really, really good clientele in all 3 industries. And, there was an aspect, we were off by about 30%, at probably our worst point of COVID, and really didn't know what to expect. And you heard Dad say a lot of it has come back, but it's come back differently. The core business is still very, very strong. But at that time, it was becoming really obvious that it was time to start diversifying. We didn't want to be in this situation again to a point where, our success was contingent upon the same thing that we had relied upon for 30 plus years. And that's really where the technical evolution or technology evolution started. I mean, prior to my time, as things were going digital, we'd taken multiple stabs at getting into the IT space.
And are you leading this initiative?
Yeah. And it wasn't a formal initiative, Cameron. I mean, it was a very informal initiative. I have a mentor beyond my dad in this business, and that's Mark Reinert. And Mark is an IT professional by trade. And a lot of my early years and then into, that diversification effort, he and I made a lot of calls together. I mean, he was my technical right hand. And so, I was kind of the overarching relational role and Mark was the technical role. And we just started to, embrace different conversations with clients in regards to how we could serve them. And, we embraced software. We embraced workflow. And started to help clients become more efficient. Well, that's counterintuitive to this core business, right? Software and workflow and less clicks, right? Yeah. Less paper coming out of the equipment. And our livelihood's contingent upon how many pieces of paper come out of, over 5,000 machines that are in the field today. but man, the response to that diversification effort, and we started to cut our teeth in some areas that we were fortunate to be successful, and had a couple flagship opportunities that we took a lot of pride in, and we started to tell that story to others in certain industries, and that's a huge component of what's driving growth today. But I tell clients today that print's really becoming a byproduct of a bigger technology service offering. And print becoming a byproduct of a bigger technology service offering, it opens a tremendous amount of opportunity inside the workplace. Phones, the infrastructure in which you run your business on, right? But everybody's definition of IT is different.
Yeah.
And the serviceability on that in the IT space as it relates to the print space is totally different.
Yeah.
SLAs are different, client expectations different. If that point up here, right? Because it's the infrastructure that runs the business. It's above the ceiling and behind the walls. If that don't work, they aren't thinking about the copier. They aren't. It's just a different responsibility. And so post COVID, we're having a lot of success and some software related opportunity. But it became very obvious that, we can't continue to refer business to these mutual partners that we have in the marketplace, because the IT demand was just growing.
Yeah.
And it's still growing. And so we jumped back into that pool, 2020? Remember, we had a lot of time on our hands with COVID.
Yeah.
We were out meeting with a lot of folks, but the sales initiative was different. And so we had a lot of time for R&D. And, we made a decision that we were going to get back in the IT space, and we went through about 12 months of development. We rolled it out onset of 21. And man, we were blowing and going. And we were blowing and going so much that the demand exceeded our ability to be able to support it.
Wow.
Yeah, truthfully. And so all this momentum, great opportunity, growth, foresight to growth was great. But about 6 months in, we were like, hey, we got to grab a gear here. We can't continue to accelerate at the rate we're operating right now, because we're going to invite a lot of vulnerability in what we can't uphold if we keep doing what we're doing. And we needed resources. We were doing a lot of that success came with a few additional resources, but a lot of PBS, traditional PBS resources. And there was a lot of conversation. How do we do this? Can we continue to do this organically? Do we have to start considering acquisitions? And we were in that space for probably 6 to 12 months. We called a lot of folks. There wasn't a lot of folks that were really willing to talk because the demand was just so high. Their businesses were rocking and rolling, and I'm not going to go into all of it, but we found an opportunity to facilitate a merger about a year ago, and we actually carved our IT division out of PBS. So PBS didn't go through a merger; the IT division did.
Okay.
To create a separate venture, and what is Centric? You see it here on the business card, but really, Centric is growing to be a division of PBS, right? And that's what we're most excited about. Being very intentional with the approach. It is very much still in an adolescent state. And you look at a business like PBS that's going to celebrate 39 years this year, but this venture is in a very adolescent state. And so, being selective about how we grow it. The demand is still tremendous, of which we're really, really excited about. But, that's the business that, Matthew and I aspire to carry forward. There's a tremendous amount of brand recognition with a 39-year-old company in this market.
And what's the offering for Centric right now? You're just talking about, hey, the IT umbrella is huge. Are you data security and
all the above.
Install and
all the above. Yeah, hardware. Cybersecurity is huge, as you guys know. Within your own businesses, So protecting the best interest of these businesses that we serve is critical. Help desk services. We have a very unique solution in the form of a voice phone product that we're very proud of. We feel there's a huge opportunity to really penetrate the market, and prioritizing that one particular solution, it should open a lot of doors, because like our copiers and printers, those phones connect to a network infrastructure. And, if the network infrastructure has opportunity, then there's even more that we can talk to them about. And so, IT managed services, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And, especially when you're going into small to medium sized businesses, some have existing partners, some don't. Those that don't have budget, but they need it. And so educating them and, where do you start? And that's where we are right now. I mean, to be totally honest. And we're eager about growth, but we're very realistic about growth too. And, every day, there's efforts being made in regards to how we continue to integrate these two businesses into one business. And, it's absolutely going to remain a separate brand, because, there is a 39-year impression of this company in the market. And, a lot of the market still looks at, this company as a copier company.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But, being able to have conversations with folks that, it opens new doors. And it opens doors that have maybe been forever closed on the print side, to be totally honest. And so that's what we're excited about. That's what we're strategizing around. But, every day as we think about the future and the investments that we have to make, you heard Matt say that, the focus has never been about big. We still challenge ourselves to be the best. We're not perfect. We got opportunity. We're challenged by things just like our competitors are, but it's all about how you respond. And we take a high sense of pride in how we respond. And, with that approach, it gives us an opportunity to work with a lot of great people, a lot of great businesses. And going to continue to invest in that as we continue to progress.
Yeah. We want to talk about kind of the future and what's next more and dive more. But I'm curious. So on your end, Mitchell, I mean, I guess you too, Matthew, like what would you tell someone? I mean, go back to the 2014 here for a second on like when you're evaluating the decision, family business or no, I'm doing my own thing. And it kind of feels like you can maybe combine both of those and what you were doing. I mean, you very clearly like you're carving the next leg of the future, but what would you tell someone who's in the middle of that decision right now?
Yeah.
Careful.
Let it go, man.
And you guys should know this is fun. It's very surreal. We've told a lot of these stories that you guys are hearing today, a lot as of recent, because Marv Sr. passed on January 6th. And it's inspired a lot of reflection. And in that reflection, it truly made me as an individual appreciate at a different level what we had in a family business. Because again, there was a lot of impression, a lot of perspective that I didn't have, at a young age that I gained as I got older. But we had something special. And, Cameron, I'll talk about 2014, but, I need to jump ahead to 2021. COVID was interesting. And I'm going to be very forthcoming. There was a lot going on in our industry at that time. And the big were getting bigger. The small were going away. And then it left the middle of the pack. And PBS was in the middle of the pack. But we had a good business. We had a healthy business. And there was a lot of folks that were interested in this business without coming out and saying it, right? And we explored some conversation for about 2 years, really the extent of COVID as we knew it. I mean, we explored some conversation, and I tell this story a lot. It was July of 2021 around a lunch table at Gasano's. Gasano's Pizza was right next door to our office in Bentonville. And Dad, myself, and Matthew were sitting down, and I was 30 years old. And for the 2 years prior, my sole responsibility from a sales standpoint, and I guess Matthew was still in sales at that point too, our responsibility was maintaining the value of the company.
Yeah.
And in maintaining the value of the company, it was becoming exhausting. We weren't focused on growth. All we were focused on was retention. And, but from a very, really from the beginning of my career, I told Dad that I would never, ever stand in the way of what he felt like was in the best interest of what he had built. And that was challenged in 2019, 2020, 2021. Mm. And he was, and he'll tell you, he was thinking that maybe there was some decisions with the best interest of the family in mind that he needed to make. And came to him in July of 2021 and said, "Hey man, it's time to make a decision, right? And it's either we're going to commit to the decision with those that have been calling and that we've been working with, or I'm going to remind you that you got a succession plan that not many people in your position have." And pretty much ask him to take a chance. And asking him to take a chance, it was essentially asking him to walk away from the biggest business transaction that he had ever been up against. And I can't look at him because it's pretty emotional, but that was a Thursday. You want to know how serious it was? He terminated the LOI on Friday.
Wow.
And in terminating that LOI, there was some absolutes that I felt the business needed. It was time to reinvest. That was an aspect of the conversation that, all while it was a healthy business, it was time to reinvest. I tell people all the time, all I heard from the time that I started was about all the fun they had and the good old days.
Yeah.
And not that we didn't have good old days or a lot of fun between 2014 and 2021, but I can honestly tell you it wasn't the same based on what I had heard. And so it was like, hey, how do we rebuild that culture? And who's gonna help us rebuild that culture, right? It started with us, and we knew we needed to surround ourselves with some people. And so if you're curious where EOS came into the equation, EOS came into the equation shortly after. I had got exposed to EOS in a Vistage group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
2017, 2018.
And talk about what EOS is, so everybody knows.
Yeah, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It was my first EOS meeting, or my first Vistage meeting. A couple guys came in, made a presentation. I'm still getting the feel of Vistage, and loved the first, half of the meeting. And then this EOS presentation goes off, and I was like, holy cow, this is awesome. PBS needs this. And he'll tell you, I ran in like a little kid on Christmas morning, and I had the book. I had done some research in the time between, leaving Fayetteville. We were at Fayetteville Town Center and getting back up here. And I'll never forget it. He told me, he's like, hey, I've seen a lot of those systems in my career. And, I'll challenge you. What can we take from that system and make it our own, make it better? And I said, oh, okay, well, let me do my research. And, I won't say that I prioritized the research. It's just, timing was huge, and it really wasn't, it didn't make as much sense. I didn't have a tremendous use case yet, but I prioritized that use case and prioritized some relationships and introduced myself to some folks, in that time, one being Dusty Pruitt, others, in that journey, and ultimately, Dusty became a partner of ours in September of 2021. And EOS was an absolute. We needed it, right? We needed process. We needed structure. We needed business continuity. And We interviewed a handful of implementers. I confided in a lot of people from my Vistage group. Some were working with implementers. Others had self-implemented. But I was telling Nick, before we started this morning, that I've always been a huge proponent of outside perspective. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty adamant that we needed an implementer, and Dusty was just a fit, really from the beginning. And that's ultimately what encouraged that partnership, and, still run on it today. Dusty's still on payroll.
Yeah,
and we joke, and it's just been phenomenal. It was a vehicle for us to really, I think, assist Matthew and I's evolution. And there were some other absolutes, but that was a big one. That was a really big one in 2021. And so September 21 is when our EOS journey started. So we're 3.5 years in. By no means is it perfect. By no means is it where it needs to be, but that's the whole purpose behind the system, right? Is just keep your sights set on the future and where you're going to go. And this vehicle in EOS can help you get there. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of fun with it. We've had a lot of good people surround us in that journey. But I'm going to tell you, in the last 12 months have been tremendous. We've exposed ourselves to some really great individuals that have joined this team. We surrounded ourselves with some folks that, came and have gone. And I tell a lot of people is, outside looking in, and you hear the story and momentum and growth, and man, it's great, right? 2024 was a year of humbling adversity, is the term that I describe it as. And 2023 was one of our best years. We were blowing and going, and best hardware year we've ever had in all of our existence. And so we were pretty optimistic about where we were going. And the reality of the situation is just as much as my role was evolving, I tried to evolve it too soon. And evolving it too soon, it cost us a lot. That team that I was very proud of, and I had a lot of loyalty and credibility from them. A tremendous amount of respect jointly. I took it for granted, to be totally honest. Took it for granted and thought, the decisions that we were making was with their best interest in mind, but really it was my best interest. 2024 was, you heard the term humbling adversity. But I'm telling you everything that I'm telling you to go back to your question about family business, and it's these two right here. And I won't discount my wife and kids. And reassurance of faith. Because man, when we were in it, it didn't really know how we got here. But the support was different, right? This was roll sleeves up and let's go to work and we'll figure it out. That support was, hey, you're going to be fine. It's part of it. Mm-hmm. And, I'll tell it to you this way, because I think he asked me the question at our annual meeting in January, because we had to reflect on 2024. And, my response to the question that Dusty posed at the time was, I think I got everything that I asked for from July of 21. And what we asked for, and the succession plan and the commitment that we sought, I personally got everything that I asked for in 2024, but it took the team. It took the team, starting with Matthew. We were fortunate to have a leadership team that rallied around the situation that we found ourselves in, and in really, really short order, we're in a better place on March 7th, 2025 than I feel we've ever been. We saw some key resources leave in 2024, and we've seen those key resources come back, and super, super grateful for that, and super excited about where we're going. Family business is unique, Cameron. And I feel what we have, we being the three of us sitting here, what we have is very unique and it's very special. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. I'm not going to tell you that it hasn't had its challenges, but it's the commitment that we made to each other. And that we don't lose sight of that commitment. And that's what motivates it. Who knows what the future has in store? I mean, we have an idea of where we're going, and how we're going to get there. But it starts with the people that this business employs, and we are very, very fortunate to have those that we do. And the business is growing. We look forward to surrounding ourselves with more great resources, so that we can be in a position to do as Matt described, and helping those folks see, provide themselves with the fulfillment that they want. And a vehicle of work, right? We don't want it to be work. We don't want it to be a job. We want it to be something that they look forward to and they enjoy being here.
Well, I want to tap into more what's next, but Matthew, here on your end,
excuse me.
All of y'all have a different unique perspective on it, but why the family business for you? What keeps you going in the family business here?
It's unique. I think Mitchell's talked on a little bit earlier, and neither one of us ever had a strong desire to get into the business. There was a lot that transpired, especially in, call it 2011, and maybe a little bit before that kind of led up to some of those things that I think it didn't make it as appealing then as maybe it was later in life. So there's never really a desire. As I tell this to people all the time that ask us about the business, and similar questions to what you just asked. And you think about the family business, and it takes a long time to mature and to understand what this vehicle's been for me, for us as a family. So, I didn't really have an option as far as what role I was going to take on when I came into the business. There wasn't really a whole lot of openings, besides on one team, and that was Mitchell's team. But as I got to the end of college and really started to understand where I wanted to go in my career, and I saw these two doing what they were doing, I worked in and out of the business throughout college, whether it be coming up 2 days a week and grabbing supplies and just going out and and seeing customers and making sure they were taken care of, to trying to sell water machines during the summer, and that was usually what that required was go pull 50 door handles by noon, and maybe find your way to the golf course in the afternoon. I may have played golf with Nick some of those afternoons. It was. There was definitely a lot that it took to get to that point, 2017, 2018 of, what do you want to go do? And I think I'd finally gotten over the edge of this is where I want to go. This is the vehicle I want to be a part of. This is the business I want to be a part of. Dad talked a lot about community. Born and raised here. Have every reason to give everything back to this community. You've got 650 to 750 clients across Northwest Arkansas. The benefit that I've gotten with my experience in this business is I've seen it really from all angles, going all the way back to the summer after, high school and driving a delivery truck and going and picking up equipment and doing all those things. I've seen it from that perspective. I've seen it from dropping off supplies. I've seen it from a sales perspective for an extended period of time. And it truly is incredible. Just, Mitchell said earlier, there's nothing sexy about a copier. There's nothing, it's not the first thing you think of when you open an office. But the thing I learned really quick was the second a copier goes down, it's a pretty big deal. So it's crazy how it all works. And so you go out and you just realize the impact that the business has on the community and the influence that this business has on us as a family. Grandfather started it 39 years ago. Without this business, our family wouldn't be what it is. And Dad coming off the street and becoming a stranger and getting into the business and understanding it and ultimately getting it to where it was and where it's been and where we're going. None of those things would have been possible. So you think back on all of those, and they start to weigh pretty heavy on you as you start to gain some maturity in your life.
Well, it's pretty cool that just to see, the impact of a multi-generational business here in the area.
I think what makes it special too is y'all all chose it. It wasn't a strategic. I mean, y'all all chose it at different times. You came to your own conclusion, and y'all know all the facts, right? The 30% of businesses transition from generation 1 to generation 2 succeed. And that number gets even smaller as you go to generation 3. Yeah. And yet y'all have linked arms.
You took the words out of my mouth, Nick. I mean, I was literally just thinking that there is a statistic that if any family business is going to fail, it's going to fail in the 3rd generation.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who it was, but somebody in the first 6 months of my career, challenged me with that stat. And I don't know that it didn't intimidate me. I mean, you heard Dad's story. Failure wasn't an option. And so I never put a lot of weight in that statistic. And we still hold ourselves accountable to that expectation and the fact of, do we wake up every day and fear failure? No. I mean, growing up, if he told us once, he told us, 100,000 times, fail fast and fail often. Without failure, you can't grow. And we've had a lot of challenges, like most businesses have. I mean, we've had challenges personally, but you learn from them, and you appreciate, the failure and the challenge that you had to navigate to appreciate what you have.
I would say one of the things that I hope you're hearing the most is that this isn't professional business systems. This is our life.
Yeah.
And not that we live for the benefits of what a family-owned business can provide from a monetary standpoint. It's, you're going to have to get up and do something. And if indeed you can find something that can provide fulfillment, you ask our newest or our latest employee, and my comment earlier about the drive at 5, how do we keep it from being a job? I mean, how do we make it to a point so that it's attractive for people to work here for 30 plus years? And how is it that those people made it their life? And there's a lot of there's a lot of quiet fulfillment that happens when there was desperation in a customer and there was really no way to pull this off, and we figure out a way to pull it off. And it's like being down by 3 runs in the 9th inning and somebody hits a walk-off. Those are fulfilling days, but we got to play again tomorrow, and that's life. These guys talk about the 2021. Mitchell commented in regards to what happened in that July session is all I needed to hear was that. Once it's their idea and not my idea, I knew it'd work. And that was music to my ears, man. And just let's do it.
Well, it was the same thing you did with your father-in-law too.
A little different.
A little different. I mean, I'm sure the conversations went in totally different ways, but there's a moment when you look somebody in the eye and say, "Hey, it's my turn."
I mean, Marvin found his place with it that he wanted to go, and I had to make the decision that fast. I was going to take it, and he knew what he wanted to do, and he couldn't do what he wanted to do unless I stepped up. And the truth of the matter is that I was 31 years old as well, and I was intimidated as all get out, but I wasn't going to fail. And it was just, again, I don't think about this. I feel so blessed since, I wouldn't call it in 1986 or 87 or 1996, but for the majority of my career, I didn't feel like I was going to work.
Mm.
I thought I was going to live.
Mm.
And I would wish that to anybody. If you find something like that, if you can find that vehicle, in regards to what we're trying to communicate with this session, is search for something that can touch your heart. And if touching your heart's helping others, and you think about being in a copier company, how in the world can we make that happen? We made it happen. We can make it happen. We do it 35 times a day when they need us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, the stories that these guys have within their involvement, they were involved long before they went to work here. They made sacrifices. I was at the office first. I was at the office last. And the house that we lived in when Matthew was born, I mean, there was a desk in the kitchen, and that's where I ate dinner. And the sacrifices that they made. But once they got to a certain age, then I felt like that the life that this was going to give me back. And Mitchell was starting to play baseball, and I was like, you know what? I got to figure out how to, and it's all used now, work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's life balance.
Yeah.
Define your priorities. And amazingly enough, that if you can stay focused in regards to what those priorities are, life will follow. And if you're chasing and idolizing the monetary aspects of it, don't know that you're going to find all the fulfillment that you think you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would encourage all these guys that want to take the leap. Do it for the right reasons.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. Boy, I know we just have a few minutes left here, so I just wanted to kind of make sure we're covering everything as we're wrapping up. Yeah. A couple things. So, what's the now look like? What are y'all's roles now? And then let's talk about the future. What's the future got in store? I'm looking.
Whose role you want to start with, Dad, or you want to?
I think it's a good segue. I mean,
I just described it. I mean, life is that. My father-in-law told me when he retired at 50, he was on my case at 45 years old that I'm working too much, and you've already done it. You can do exactly what I did. I showed you the way, and it was very appealing, but that didn't look fulfilling to me. What I was doing felt fulfilling, and what's next is grandkids, life after 80 hours a week, but retirement, don't see it. Mm-hmm. Don't see it. I might not specifically be in this office every day, but the involvement that these guys allow me to have, mentoring's not complete yet. Mm-hmm. And you got to mentor with the right aspects, that you're not mentoring with motive, so that, it makes us all more successful. That, I say it every day in my quiet time, that, growing their leadership and doing it with faith base, and feeling confident in regards to that. So, why would you retire from doing that?
Yeah. So
that's my next. I love the side of what we're doing from the advanced technology business and so on and so forth. I think that the future's extremely bright. Mm-hmm. So make more waves.
I'll let you go.
Cameron, you asked about roles, and never been one for titles, truthfully. And my outlook on titles was, very much the same of what my outlook was and why I didn't want to get into this business. I didn't want a title or a role given to me. If there was going to be roles and responsibilities, we were going to earn them. And, it's been fun to navigate that evolution, because I do believe that we've earned the roles that we're in. Mm-hmm. And we didn't assume them. We earned them. and I'm hopeful that, the team that we surround ourselves would attest, because that was real important for us. The title wasn't going to carry any weight, or the role wasn't going to carry any weight if you didn't have the respect and the trust and the credibility with those that you surrounded yourself with. So yes, from an EOS standpoint, I sit in a visionary capacity. EOS has brought upon personality testing, right? So we've learned a lot about ourselves that maybe we didn't know. There's a lot of similarity between Dad and I. So you can imagine what that brings upon from which I think it was healthy. I don't know who we were telling the other day, and I think you guys can probably tell by his demeanor. He owns a room.
Yeah.
He's done a really good job at it. But there hasn't been too many people that have challenged in this business, wanted to challenge, his presence in that room. And I knew that if I was going to earn this role, that I was going to have to challenge him. And that was hard. And it was healthy. There's a lot of conflict. It was healthy conflict. And there's still healthy conflict. I mean, there was a meeting the other day that I said, hey, I need you in the right frame of mind, man. Because when you give him the time that he does have, his new position, his new role affords, when you give him a time to get on the field, man, he's had a lot of rest in between. So he comes in with a lot of energy, a lot of passion, which is fun. We need it. We need the shot in the arm. And I tell people all the time, they're like, hey, is your dad retired? It's like, Dad's never going to retire. And it's like, well, don't you want that? No, not really. I mean, we've been fortunate to find ourselves in roles that support each other very, very well. And, the day that response isn't the same, then, hey, we'll reevaluate. We're not there yet. And so, continue to steer the ship, man. I mean, you ask about where the business is going. You heard my explanation earlier, Prince becoming a byproduct of a bigger technology service offering. We're very fortunate to be 39 years old and have the customers that we do. And we look at it as an opportunity to better serve them. And that's where the focus is right now. It's not that we have all these customers and now we have these other services and we're just going to become this big company. No, our goal is to do it the right way. And in doing it the right way, the growth would be a byproduct of those efforts. So that's where we are. Where we are.
Yep. From my standpoint, it kind of goes back to the things that we were talking about just going into 2021 and kind of our EOS journey. I took a leap of faith during, I guess it was 2021, the COVID times and where we were as a business. And the thing that we kind of recognized in going through the EOS process and starting to understand where we were currently and where we were trying to go, we didn't have a whole lot of continuity across the business. You had the three of us all sitting on the same side of the house, and then the other side of the house really was, kind of not abandoned, but it wasn't near as attended to as the other side was. And so in 2021, I took a leap of faith, and it was also healthy for Mitchell and I. I reported to Mitchell for the first 3 or 4 years of my career, and so that would weigh on me pretty well. Don't kid yourself. When you talk about family business, can be tough. It can be tough in those situations. I tell people all the time, it definitely got to days where it was like, I'm leaving. And when I'm leaving, I don't want to see you until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I know you usually text me and everything else after 5 o'clock or whatever time we leave at 6 o'clock. I was like, I don't want to see you until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And so in 2021, I took kind of a leap of faith and determined that, the operational side of our business needed some attention. And with that came, a whole new set of books to learn. Dad was really good at it because Dad had sat in really every seat at a high level for a long time. And so thinking about family business, thinking about continuities, I thought, what a cool aspect it would be if I knew the operational side of the business well enough to where if he was on the sales side or, going out and being in front of the customer, I was behind the curtain, but he and I were able to connect in a way that it seemed seamless between what he was promising to the customer and what we were delivering. And I did. I jumped in kind of head first. Didn't know what it was going to look like. Kind of a similar situation in what Mitchell jumped into in 2014, and had some turnover early. Had to jump into some seats that, and take on leadership and management responsibilities that didn't see coming, to be quite honest. And you think about it, Mitchell mentioned there's guys that are still working for us. They've celebrated 34, 35 years that, they came to work for our grandfather, and then they worked for Dad. I don't say they work for us, they work with us. And, I had to gain a lot of respect. The individual who's been here for 35 years, and I've been here for 7, and, they've known me since I was born, really. So it was a big opportunity. It was a big responsibility that these two trusted me with, and jumping in and then starting to just kind of dissect what was going on, and how, what had been abandoned maybe for a little while. It needed some TLC. We needed to put some tender love and care to it. And it's kind of now grown into, from an EOS term, an integrator, and kind of dealing with all facets of the business, working within the operational side, which is, service delivery and connectivity and supply chain, to finance, to, whether I need to be involved with sales with Mitchell or Alex's team. And, it's a lot of fun. There's no real balance for me of where I can and can't go, which is fun. I get to work close to our people all the time. That's probably the coolest part about it. You get to, where you took the time as a sales guy for multiple years, and your time was supposed to be spent in front of a customer, right? Whether they were an existing customer and you're just trying to check on them, or you're sitting in front of a new customer trying to, bring them on as a new client, and your time shifts. Yeah. I think I probably said it to Mitchell. I probably said it to other people inside the organization is, my calendar's not as full now. And I go, man, where's my productivity at? Because I'm not meeting with customers. I don't have customer meetings on my calendar. Well, my time is spent just with our people, internally, making sure that we're keeping the pulse inside the business, just like we are outside the business with our customers, and assisting in building a culture of which we want. Dad mentioned earlier Wired, and making sure that's instilled down to, all 27 associates. And Wired is winning, integrity, respect, excellence, and discipline, and keeping that at the forefront in everything that we do. So, very operationally, minded, which is kind of good. I really enjoy it, and we look forward to continuing to invest in that, in the people that we brought along for the journey, the people who have joined the journey in the last, call it 12 to 24 months, that we're, ecstatic to have. Mitchell mentioned growing our leadership team and having individuals, like a Jonathan Davidson from a finance standpoint, and Mark Reinert from a technology standpoint, who've, Mark's been here for 27 years. JD's been here for, almost a year and a half. Alex McClung and leading our sales organization, and Caleb Hill running the operational side of the business and assisting there. We've grown into having these roles and giving the business the attention that it needed, rather than one or two individuals do everything. And it's been crucial. So we've learned a lot. But we've grown a lot internally to make it all possible.
There's a book that I got exposed to that somebody sent me anonymously about 2 years ago, and it speaks to everything that you just heard from Matthew in regards to his role evolution. And but that book is called 10X is Easier Than 2X. You read it? And this book shows up on my desk. I'm like, oh, who's this? And, I pushed it to the side for a long time. I do enjoy reading, but, for somebody to send it to me anonymously, I was like, oh, this is strange. I'll just add it to the library. Well, I finally prioritized reading it. And man, when I opened it, I couldn't close it. And I couldn't close it because I read it through the lens of our business, right? And I do read a lot of personal and professional development books, and it's, I challenge myself to read it through the lens of, hey, where I'm at in my personal life, where I'm at in my career, how does this apply? But to sum it up, Matthew talks about Dad's role over the years, and he sat in a lot of seats. He sat in in a sales seat. He sat in an operational seat. He sat in a service seat, ran the company in a president's capacity, right? And I know I'm not offending him in saying he built a phenomenal 2X business. And, you hear 10X is easier than 2X. That's not revenues and profits.
It's actually 4X.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Give him more credit. But that book, man, it was so enlightening. And there's a tremendous amount of examples in the reading, but 10X was really, what do you want from your business?
Mhm.
And getting what you want from your business, you have to find a way to get yourself in your unique ability, so that you're spending 80% of your time in your unique ability. And if you're going to find yourself into 80% of your time is being spent in that 80% of your unique ability, what do you got to do? You got to delegate the things that are preventing you from being in that unique ability. And that's what really started to trigger a lot of, our, desires to grow the team and surround ourselves with people that, accented, what maybe we were average at and they were really good at. And that's where, the Jonathans in oversight in the controller's capacity, Caleb in an operational capacity, Mark, 27 years. I mean, Lord knows where we would be without that guy. I mean, he literally brought us from the analog age to the digital age.
Yeah.
Alex has got a cool story. Don't have enough time to tell it today, but just, it's neat, man. And I give a lot of credit. I give that book to a lot of people, especially, generationally speaking, entrepreneurs. And I would encourage you guys, if you haven't read it, read it. There's a tremendous amount of content around efficiency and effectiveness. And our goal is not 10X revenues and 10X profits. If it happens, great, but it's not the goal. We're trying to build a great business and build a business that we can be proud of, that, hopefully there's future generations that can explore the benefits of it. So it's neat.
It's good. Last question for me, and then Cameron, you can kind of take us home here. But as you think about your dad and the impact that he's had on your business career, what is the one thing, if you could boil it down, that you feel like you've learned the most from him?
Man, didn't see that one coming. Shoot. I mentioned Wired, and there's a lot from Wired, but prior to Wired, Dad used it's called the 3 C's, and it's commitment, communication, and consistency. And those 3 things, I say it to people all the time. Yeah, Wired are our core values, but the 3 C's, the backbone to our core values, and those are the things that were instilled in us at young ages. And it's probably why there was a little bit of seamless transition from, what we experienced growing up to getting into this business, because a lot of the things, like Mitchell said earlier, of what was done here was also done at home. But those 3 words right there were a very heavy influence on us in our upbringing. Dad used it in every aspect. He still uses it in every aspect of his life. He says it's crucial here, right? In running a business, but it's also crucial in your marriage. It's crucial in your friendships. It really is. It helps be successful in anything that you're doing. So, I know you said maybe one word, but I'll give those 3 words. Yeah.
It's not hard. I'll overarch with one word: discipline. And I'm going to tell you, growing up as a kid, I asked myself many times, why in the hell does he make me do these things? I know now. And he was just a very, very disciplined individual. And a lot of that discipline, I think, cascaded from, the stories that you've heard this morning, the individual that instilled a different level of discipline in him that he didn't know that he had. And, that discipline then carried forward into our life. And we were very disciplined in what the 3 C's meant to us. He was very committed to his family. He was very, and I say he is. We don't need to talk past tense. He's very committed to his family. The people that come into his life, it's just, at this time, you're the most important person, and that's the way he made us feel. And he was very consistent with that commitment. And there wasn't a lot we didn't talk about, right? So those disciplines now, exist in our own lives, and Matthew hit on it. From a marriage, as a parent, as a friend, as a peer, you don't know what influence you are on the people that you come in contact with, and the aspect of you don't know what to expect, and then the results of those interactions. That's the faith aspect. Everything happens for a reason, and that's there for me personally. There's just been so much reassurance in that over the last 12 to 15 months in regards to, hey man, there's a bigger plan. And I'm a control freak by nature. I got it from the guy on the end of the table. There's just some things you can't control. So discipline.
So good.
And wrapping up here, is this one for you, Matt? Last couple questions we try to ask every guest. First one being, how do you define success?
The line that exists between confidence and arrogance is a good place to live. And if indeed success breeds arrogance, don't go there. So it's a really good life staying humble. Enjoy the victory, but truly appreciate the next day when you can play again. So defining success for me would be just don't get into an arrogant side that tells you that you can't fail. You're so big, you're so bad, you're so all the above that, and nothing can take me down. The world has a way of showing you different. So,
and then last one here to Mitchell, we're a Northwest Arkansas focused podcast, Northwest Arkansas founders, builders, owners focused. Why, talk about you being the visionary for this next leg of the race. Why Northwest Arkansas? Why continue to be focused here? And maybe what's your vision outside of PBS? What's your vision for Northwest Arkansas?
Yeah. We're very fortunate to live where we do and work where we do. We talk about it. We are in a bubble, and we've said it for a long, long time. And the industry in which we work in, growth traditionally looks like acquisition, and to acquire and grow would require us to expand upon the market in which we've operated for the last 39 years. And that's just, there's never been a tremendous amount of appeal for me personally. There's a lot of alignment between Matthew and I. But that was the traditional trajectory for copier companies, for print companies. And the only way you were going to get big is it was one acquisition at a time. And we get approached all the time. It's like, hey, let's go to Fort Smith. Let's go to Little Rock. And I typically respond and go, why? We've been really, really fortunate, guys, that the clients that we do serve in Northwest Arkansas have taken us into all those markets. We've done some things because of growth in regards to how we service the state beyond Northwest Arkansas, where relationships reside here that have presence elsewhere. But the gratitude of just the economic prosperity in Northwest Arkansas, I don't think we need to lose sight of that. And not losing sight of that, that's influenced a lot of what you've heard today in regards to just how we diversify. And again, the tenure in the market doesn't hurt. And so how do we maximize that opportunity in Northwest Arkansas to continue to serve those that have been loyal to us well, but also continue to introduce ourselves to those that maybe we've known in the past and there's a reintroduction to be had, or exposing ourselves to new relationships. And if that's the priority, the growth will happen naturally. I truly believe that. There are KPIs and metrics that we have to uphold, right? It's beyond handshakes and you see it on the wall, people doing business with people. There is accountability that does have to exist if we're going to uphold, what our expectation is. But, if we were in any other market, maybe my response is different. But our industry, the industry in which you guys work within, I think we are very, very fortunate. And our goal next 5 years is we're going to stay focused here. And there may be others in the industry that are prioritizing elsewhere, right? And their growth and trajectory model, whether it's consistent or it's different, hey, we're going to stay consistent in this market. We're going to stay committed to this market. And who knows, man? I mean, we've been really fortunate in regards to just who we've got the opportunity to serve, and it's created a lot of opportunity that I don't know that we could have ever expected. That came with partnerships that we've exposed ourselves to over the years, and we can now pursue different prospective customers. We have a client that's got 160 locations across 20 something states. Would that have been something that he ever anticipated being able to pursue 10, 15 years ago? No. But we've got partnerships in place that now allow us to explore different opportunities. But that company's headquartered here in Northwest Arkansas. It's just big and best. If the focus was big, the strategy would be different, Cameron, to be totally honest. But we're not losing sight of what got us to the game, and we're just going to continue to refine how we play it.
Were you going to say something?
He said it when he went to the best, to the big.
That's good. That's good. Well, I think what's been fun for us, I don't think we got to know each other in college, but it's fun seeing you shine in Matthew. Like the things that I know about Matthew, I feel like I know you a lot better. And then, us just meeting today, I think it's really clear how much of an impact you've had on both of them, but also how the different gifts you have live in each one of them. And one of the things we like to do at the end of the episode is really just capture what we learned from you all. And I think the number one thing above everything else, and I think it's your business purpose, is you're committed to your customers. And you cannot win if you're not committed to your customers. And I think y'all have you've done that well for a long time. And we've interviewed businesses. We've interviewed businesses with different life cycles, and 39 years is a really long time. And to do it over that arc, to do something consistently and well for 39 years is harder than doing it for 5 years or 10 years. And so I think that's really cool for us to learn. And one of the quotes, you said you love to spoil your customers. And I think that's just a magnificent quote on how to really have customer service that outshines your competitors. So I think that's really good. I think the next piece is the intensity. And I think that carried from Marvin to you. And whether that's I'm sure in your worst days, it can be, not great. And in your best days, it's something that makes your business really special. But the intensity of going to see all 7 machines every day for your first customer, to 25 cards a day being passed out, to how y'all track KPIs now and review those, whether it's weekly or monthly, you're dialed in on service and on the business. And you can't win if you're not tracking how you're doing. I just loved hearing about, we're going to actually be the ones to tell our customers if we didn't meet and satisfy what we promised to them. I mean, that's unbelievable. And I think the last piece, and we just talked about it, Mitchell, you highlighted it really well, is growth. And I think that has probably been the one core thread through all the founders that we've interviewed, is growth just isn't, it's not a focus, it's a byproduct. And I think you capture that really well with your last answer. If we're providing the best service to our customers, we will grow. And that is the strategy. Being the best is the strategy. And I think a lot of people, young, old, whatever season they're in business, you've got to have goals, you've got to have targets. But if you live and die by those, and you don't live and die by how you're providing the service to the customer and being the best, you won't win. And so I think those are the 3 things as I think about PBS and leaving today. I learned those, Cameron learned those, and anyone who listens to this is going to shine really clear. So thank y'all for the time. How can people reach out to you or find out more about your business?
GoPBS.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, GoPBS.com. But guys, thank you. This was fun. This was a lot of fun. This was a first for me. I didn't know what to anticipate. I'm hopeful we encompassed, what you guys were seeking, because you got a neat opportunity in where you're trying to establish this podcast and who you're trying to attract and the stories that you're trying to capture. Very grateful to participate in that.
Absolutely.
And anything we can do for y'all, you guys never hesitate to ask. So it's been fun.